So here we are, Solon and Croesus, section E, and in the previous section, Croesus is on top of the pyre, and about to be executed, about to be burned alive, and he's called upon Solon, the wise Athenian, who warned him years before of the dangers of hubris, and now he knows that Solon was right, and he calls upon Solon, and I suppose admits to Solon, yes, you were right, Solon. And Cyrus, the Persian, who is watching this scene, is curious about who this Solon is, and he asks his interpreters to ask Croesus, who is this Solon? And Croesus explains. And that's where we are at the beginning of this section. We have Croesus. Here's the verb, and it's going to mean something like Croesus was recounting these things, tauta. He was explaining these things, i.e. Who Solon was and what warning he had given. But in a sort of dramatic turn, Herodotus tells us that the noun is ta perieskata. Okay, now these are the very edges of the pyre, genitive, now, erde, were beginning to burn. This word here, hemenes, feminine genitive, going with the pyre having already been lit, was now, the verb is kaio, was now catching fire. And so Herodotus tells us there at the beginning that the situation for Croesus is getting very, very close. In the next sentence then we have Cyrus, having heard akousas from the interpreters, what, it's the things which, it's neuter plural ha, what Croesus had said. Apon is the aorist of lego, as you know, but best translated here as a pluperfect, what Croesus had said. How does Cyrus react? Well, we have two participles, two aorist participles. The first one is metagnous, and the second one is enoesas. And then, when we have translated those two aorist participles, our main verb is not until here, ekelue. And if we go to the end of the sentence, I suppose he ordered his slaves, here is the infinitive, to put out to kaiomenon pour, the burning fire, ten takistan, the quickest way. Now that's what, so obviously Cyrus has a change of heart, and this change of heart is explained in the previous clause introduced by those two aorist participles. Now our first one is metagnous. Now this is metagignosko, and meta as a preposition, of course, either means after or with, but as a prefix, one of its connotations is often a change, and that's what we have here. Metagnous means having changed his mind. And then we have enoesas, which is to consider, and it's an aorist participle, having considered. We might be tempted in English to translate it as a present participle and saying considering. And what is it that Cyrus considers? Well, he considers that he himself, being a man, we have then the verb is down here, didoia, was giving to the fire alon, anthropon, another man. Now, you can see that the effect that Herodotus is aiming at here, he has juxtaposed autos anthropos with alon anthropon, and the repetition there of anthropos is very effective. I suppose what it is that Cyrus no longer sees Croesus as his enemy, but simply as another man. Cyrus is a man, Croesus is a man, and I suppose what you might say is that this humanitarian impulse which suddenly strikes Cyrus arises from his recognition of the common humanity which he shares, which the two men share. It's rather like, I suppose, in the modern world, you might have a racist who is about to say something racist or do something racist, and then he suddenly realizes that the man, the object of his hatred, is in actual fact just another man, just like he is, with a family and with all the problems that all men have to endure. And Cyrus now suddenly recognizes that Croesus is just a man like he is. We have another clause, though, beginning with genomenon. Notice which is an aorist participle. It's from gignomai, obviously, but it's not gignomenon, it's genomenon. So we're not going to say who was. We're going to say who had been, because it's an aorist participle. It's accusative, clearly, and it goes with alon anthropon, which is referring to Croesus on the pyre, who had been. Eudaimonia is a dative, clearly, with the iota subscript. It means in terms of a good life, in terms of happiness, no less than himself. This is the genitive that you get with comparatives. Elaton is an irregular comparative. It's the comparative of oligos. It's no fewer, but we're going to say here no less than himself. What Cyrus considers is that Croesus had been a king, a great king, king of Lydia, just as Cyrus is a great king, king of Persia. So what we see here, I suppose, is that Cyrus acknowledges that Croesus is his equal, and I suppose he's his equal in status. They're both great kings, and he's equal in that they're both just men too. That's, I suppose, what autos anthropos, alon anthropon is. They are equal, both men and both kings. And Cyrus considers that he was giving another man who had been no less than himself in terms of prosperity to the fire. And then we have the important word, zonta, alive. He's going to burn him alive. So Cyrus has a very significant change of heart, and he ordered, there's no object for ekelua, he ordered his slaves, his officers, here is the infinitive, to put out the quickest way. Ten takisten hodon is understood, the burning fire, tokaiomenon pur. And katabibadsto. Now remember, we had anabibadsto earlier on, when Croesus was placed up on top of the fire, and now the instructions from Cyrus are to bring Croesus down. And not just Croesus, both Croesus and those with Croesus, the 14 Lydian children who were also on the fire with Croesus. So So it's interesting that, remember, Herodotus is a Greek, and Croesus is a Lydian, and Cyrus is a Persian, and Croesus has finally, at the 11th hour, learned the lesson that Solon the Athenian had tried to teach him about hubris and about nemesis. It seems in actual fact that Cyrus the Persian here has learned that lesson much more quickly than Croesus did. But both of them, remember, Croesus the Lydian, Cyrus the Persian, are non-Greek. Now, the Greek word for a non-Greek is barbaros. It's where we get our word barbarian from. But the Greek word barbarous doesn't have any of the nasty connotations that our word barbarian does. Barbaros in Greek simply means someone who does not speak Greek. And it's interesting that Herodotus here clearly admires Cyrus's change of heart, and his admiration. His history, written in Greek for a Greek audience, could easily have been just a eulogy of Greek culture and Greek life. But Herodotus himself travelled widely in the non-Greek world, and he admired non-Greeks. He admired the Egyptians, he admired the Persians, and his admiration is very clear here in this account of Cyrus's change of heart. Okay, so next sentence. You know this verb, I think. It's in the GCSE vocabulary. It's peiromai, which is to try. Okay, and the men trying. Now, what they're trying to do is not expressed. They are trying to put the fire out. Uk edunanto, but they weren't able. But they were not able to extinguish, I suppose, to extinguish the fire. Eti, they still, despite their efforts, they were not able to extinguish the fire. Now notice how Herodotus winds up the tension here. Croesus has changed his mind. Cyrus has changed his mind. Croesus is going to be saved, but, oh no, his change of heart has come too late. The fire is taking hold. So we have, as we had at the beginning here in the first line, the edges of the fire were starting to burn, and now those who are trying to put out the fire can't actually do it. We have Herodotus winding up the tension and the drama. So at this point, and that's what entautha means, it means, I suppose, here, but it means it's not local, it's temporal. At this point, Croesus, learning, or having learned, is an aorist participle, having learned of the change of heart, metagnosis is the noun, or from metagignosko, the verb which we had up here, top left. So learning of Cyrus's change of mind, what does Croesus do? Well, he notice what we have here is what he calls upon Apollo, and we have two verbs here. In fact, this is the verb, isn't it? Epikaleomai, I call upon. And epiboomai is to call or to shout, I suppose, to shout to. He shouts to Apollo. Now why Apollo? Well, Apollo, of course, was the god of Delphi, and it was to Delphi that Croesus had sent his representatives to find out whether he should invade Persia and attack Cyrus, and had been given the dubious answer that if he did attack Cyrus, he would end up destroying a great kingdom. So I suppose that Croesus may feel that Apollo had duped him, and that therefore, although of course Apollo's answer would be, sorry mate, you duped yourself, but he may feel that Apollo owes him a favour. So he shouted to Apollo, calling upon him, appealing to him to do something, and the verb, what he appeals to Apollo to do, is to stand by him, parasternai. Now if a god stands by you, he protects you. So calling upon Apollo to stand by him, and to rescue, I suppose, him from the present evil, misfortune. And then in the next line we have a picture of Croesus dakruon. We have some emotion here. He's about to be burned alive. He's weeping, he's crying, he's burst into tears, and he is calling upon the god. And then, in a final dramatic touch, what happens? Out of the clear sky and cloudless sky, suddenly, ex apines, it doesn't look like it, but it's an adverb meaning suddenly. And again, this is drama. Suddenly, clouds, nepher, sunedramen, ran together, literally. It's treko, isn't it? Edramon. They ran together. Clouds gathered, I suppose. So, from a clear and cloudless sky, gathered, all of a sudden, clouds. And a storm. Katerage. A storm burst. And Herodotus, in actual fact, gives us here, in those two words, kaimon and ketarage, some sound effects, a bit of onomatopoeia in actual fact. You have some guttural sounds here. You have a kai at the beginning of kaimon, you have a kata, kappa there, and you have a gamma there. Okay, now these are guttural sounds, which are meant to represent the sound of this storm suddenly bursting. Okay. A storm suddenly burst, and here's the verb, hyusen. It's an impersonal verb. It rained. Most verbs of the weather are impersonal. It's not he or she, it's it. And it rained, with water. And labrotatoi, okay, which is a superlative, with, I suppose we would say, with torrential rainfall. It rained with torrential rainfall. And the result of this is the pyre was, interesting verb, isn't it, with a kata, was extinguished. So we have a lot of drama here in this final section, or section E rather, with Cyrus suddenly relenting and giving in to this humanitarian impulse. And then we have, but oh dear, it could be too late, the fire's taking hold. And then we have Croesus in tears addressing, appealing to Apollo to help him, to rescue him. And then the storm suddenly appears and heavy rainfall puts out the pyre.